Welcome back to The Awakening. I'm Father Justin Waltz, and today we're sitting down with Deacon, soon to be Father Colten Steiner, who will be ordained to the priesthood this summer 2026. One of the reasons, Colten, I think a lot of people are sort of wandering is that they don't know how to discover God's will in their life. And it's pretty radical when a man gives up his life to be a priest. You're about ready to be ordained a priest, already ordained a deacon. And so I was wondering, and I thank you for being on the show today, but wondering if you'd be willing to share your story, what we call a vocation story, with our listeners and watchers here on The Awakening, kind of giving them an idea of what it looks like when a man finds his way into seminary and all the way to the priesthood.
Yeah, Father, I just want to thank you for this opportunity to be on The Awakening and share my story, because it's not so much just my story, but it's God's story of grace working in my life. And just initially you asked what allows us, what moves us to answer God's call. And it's like, well, not only is it his call, but it's his grace that's moving in us to answer it. So
Amen.
Really starts here, right here at St. Joseph's Catholic Church, where I was baptized, brought into the faith, received that gift, and where I really just grew up in the faith. Went to grade school here at St. Joe's Grade School, but going to Catholic grade school and throughout the young formative years of my life, the faith was something that was held up as important, but not always as something that was the most important thing in life. It seemed like always something sitting on the back burner, simmering, something you had to pay attention to, but there's something always closer, always in one of the front burners that had to be given more attention, more invested in. And so that was always kind of the main sort of presentation of the faith. Something out there, and really kind of the priesthood as well, something at a distance. I see it, I admire it, but not something that's close, not something that's always hot and ready for me.
I can really relate to that. I went to 12 years of Catholic school, graduated long before you did, and the faith was just something that was sort of an afterthought, right?
Yeah,
I mean, we had religion class, but it certainly wasn't front and center. I didn't even really get to know a priest until my senior year of high school, when we finally got a young guy assigned to us. And it changed my life, just having all of a sudden this guy that knew what he was talking about, answering my questions. More about that in my own vocation story that's coming. But that resonates deeply with me. A lot of Catholic education is academically focused, sports focused, small class focused. But certainly in the 90s, and you would have graduated, 2015?
2016, close.
Yeah, 2016. So, I know in our own diocese that's really become front and center now. But for many years, and even across the nation, a lot of the times it's certainly offered, but it the Catholic culture that should be there is not necessarily there.
Yeah. And so in a way similar to you, it was really once I got to junior high, really mostly high school, where I got to interact with a young priest who's on fire, zealous for the faith, that the idea of priesthood became something closer. It moved from the back burner closer to the front, and especially just because the faith now was presented to me in such a new and exciting way, in a way that really convicted me. Like, oh, okay, here's this young guy who could have done anything with his life. I think of Father Grassgard, who was on his way to medical school, who left all that to join the priesthood and has been a faithful priest ever since. So here's these guys who had all these different options, but they chose to follow God in this way. And they're on fire for it, and they love it. They love their people. They love Jesus. There's got to be something more here. And so I started to ask those questions, really started to treat the faith as something that isn't just, given to me by my parents, but something that is for me, something to invest in myself. And that all hit the fore when I got to go on the pilgrimage to Rome that every high schooler, Catholic high schooler in North Dakota has the opportunity to do. And my year was really a unique year because it was that summer of 2015 when Pope Francis decided to showcase and open up the shroud to pilgrims coming to Italy, coming to Turin to see the Shroud of Turin.
Just for some of you who may not know what the Shroud of Turin is, it's the burial cloth that Jesus was wrapped in traditionally when he was buried. And when he resurrected from the dead, and I would encourage you to look this up, maybe we'll do an episode in the future on it, but he left an imprint of his crucified body in the shroud itself. And as they've studied it, again, I don't have time to get into it, but essentially he did like a quantum leap, they think, through physics, and left like a photocopy of himself that's burned through the shroud. And it's one of the, most magnificent relics that the Catholic Church has. And I think it's about every 25 years it comes out, but Pope Francis decided in 15 to just bring it out in an unprecedented way for people to come and see and adore it.
Mm-hmm. And what was amazing of all of it was that it just so happened that that was the year that we were going on pilgrimage to Rome. And even before that, there's this little orientation that they give us out at the University of Mary, a little sort of crash course on do's and don'ts of Rome. Don't act like a total tourist, be courteous. Sometimes Americans get a bad rap, and that's going to be portrayed on you, so try to work against that. And one of the first things that they told us was, this is a pilgrimage. It's not a vacation. And so there are going to be really times where you don't want to be here. You're in this beautiful city of Rome, other surrounding cities, surrounded by the saints, all this beauty. But because of this idea of a pilgrimage, things aren't going to be going exactly as planned. We're going to run into obstacles. We're going to run into roadblocks, things that we couldn't foresee or plan for. That's going to be frustrating. It's going to be hard. Plus, we're going to Rome at one of the hottest times of the year, so it's going to be hot. It's going to be sweaty. And that's not just something to be thrown away, but actually you offer all that within your pilgrimage for a specific intention. And so they're like, pray about something or someone that you want to offer your pilgrimage for. And that really struck me. I hadn't really thought about that. I was totally in that mindset of vacation, see these cool things, eat some awesome food, just, a kind of high schooler sort of mindset. I'm like, I started thinking, and it seemed like almost everyone else in my class knew exactly what they wanted to do after we graduated high school, going into our senior year. They knew where they wanted to go to school, what they wanted to major in, how they wanted to meet their spouse, what their spouse was going to be, all these different qualifications, where they were going to get married, how many kids, all this different stuff. And it's like, I don't even know what I want to have for lunch tomorrow.
Right.
And so that thought kind of crossed my mind. So I'm like, okay, my intention, I want to offer this pilgrimage that God helps me figure out what I want to do with my life. And I'm sure, Father, there's some kind of blinking red lights going off in your head right now, but that's where I was led, like what I want to do. So then we fast forward a little bit and we get over to Rome, and I kind of forget about that intention. We have a day or so over there, just kind of get it adjusted to everything. But after a while, we take a train ride up to Turin, and as we're getting ready for it, we're at this train station in Rome, and they're just like, all the leaders are telling us, get on a train, doesn't matter who you sit by, you don't need to be by your friends, make new friends, just find a seat, sit down. I mean, they're herding 130 high schooler students, which,
it's a miracle.
Thank you, God, for their sacrifice. Because I'm sure it was not easy. But I don't listen to them. I get on a train. I kind of save some seats for my buddies, and I'm waiting for them. But they don't show up. And I'm like, okay, maybe they got on a different train. But everyone sort of files in, finds their seat, and here I am sitting by myself with 3 seats around me. And then the last of the group comes in, and it's 3 seminarians who are studying at the North American College in Rome.
So the North American College in Rome, just to fill you in, is the American Pontifical Seminary over in Rome, where many of our American seminarians go to study.
Yeah. And so it was 3 guys from the Diocese of Bismarck who were helping out with this pilgrimage. And they had told us that seminarians were going to be with us and helping us and accompanying us. And I kind of knew, like, oh, yeah, these are guys who are on their way to becoming priests. But I didn't know much more than that. And in my mind, I just kind of conceived of them as these sort of guys who just sat in the room and read the Bible all day and were weird and didn't have anything else to do with their life but, be a priest. And even though I knew a lot of great, awesome priests, I didn't think that, seminarians were almost like just a different category altogether.
Normal people.
Exactly. And so I see them and I'm like, oh, man, don't sit by me. Don't sit by me. And I lock eyes with one of them. And I can just, now as a seminarian, just hear the internal monologue of, oh, look at this guy sitting all by himself. He doesn't have any friends to sit with him. Well, Jesus would sit next to this loner. And I have the complete opposite, going on in my brain. I'm like, don't leave me alone. I don't want to sit next to you. But of course, they come and sit by me. And we make small talk for a little while. And, like, how's Rome? Do you like it? Is the food good? And after a while, of course, one of them, like every good seminarian should, asks me, like, yeah, you ever, thought about becoming a priest? And I kind of gave him this, flippant, just high schooler answer of just like, oh, like, I've always just wanted to get married. I want to have a family and have a wife and, just have a normal job and just kind of do my thing throughout life. And, the priesthood, I know we need them. Priests are great, but I don't know. It's never really anything that interested me. I don't think I could do it. And after a while of just kind of going on, and one of them just kind of stops me. It's Father Jordan Dosh, then just seminarian Jordan Dosh. And he would very politely just listen to me the whole time. And as he broke in, he just asked me, wow. That's probably one of the most selfish things I've ever heard in my entire life. And just like knife to the heart. I'm like, wow, for these guys who are going to be priests, it wasn't very charitable, wasn't very nice. But actually, in reality, it was charity, because he pointed out, never once did you mention what you thought God wanted for your life. It was all about what you wanted and what you thought was best. And so in charity, he was pointing out that I was just thinking in this extremely selfish manner.
Which is kind of what the culture encourages.
Totally.
I mean, you come up from an early age saying, what do you want to do? What would you be good at? What are your gifts?
You do you.
You do you, a lot of that, versus, a life of happiness a lot of the times is sacrificial love, like how you living for someone else. And if you really do a discernment of your life, when you find those areas that you have done that, they're very life-giving. And the rest of those personal self-centered choices, might lead to instant gratification in the moment, but a lot of the times they leave you more, empty than what they found you.
Exactly. And so, kind of realizing that, I just asked him, well, okay, how did you know that this is what God was calling you to do? How do you know that, like, this was something for you, that this was not just what you wanted, but actually what God was calling to you to actually fulfill your life. And so he told me his vocation story, and it was then Gregory Crane and Jared Wolf, who are also now priests for our diocese, but they were there too, and I wanted to hear their stories as well. And it was really inspiring to hear them talk about their relationship with Jesus, the way that he had worked in their life and spoken in their hearts and guided them throughout their lives to do and follow his will. And so after having that 3.5-hour long conversation on the train ride from Rome to Turin, all that was percolating in my brain. And then we get in line to go and see the shroud, and that itself probably took an hour or so. And so even more time for that, what they were talking about, this idea of following God's will, their vocation stories, just continuing to percolate and just sit in my mind. And as we get closer and closer, the one line spreads into 3 lines. One brings you the closest to the shroud, one a little bit farther away, and one farther back. And not knowing really what I was doing or how this all was going to work, I just got into one of the lines and it ended up bringing me into the closest line. And so I look up and the shroud is probably 8 to 8.5 feet away from my face. And I can see Jesus' body clear as day. I can see his face, and I just look into his face. And I ask him, well, okay, if I'm supposed to do what you want, like, Jesus, what do you want for my life? And it was just perfect silence in the cathedral there. And I just hear this still, quiet voice resonate over it all. And I hear him say, I want you to lay down your life for me and follow me. And that hits me like a ton of bricks. And I get outside the cathedral, and I must have looked like a deer in the headlights, just totally lost. And Father Grassgard, who was the chaplain of Trinity High School at the time, just kind of comes up and puts his arm on my shoulder. He's like, hey, don't worry, God's in control. And I'm like, that's what I'm worried about. And so we have the rest of the pilgrimage. And after that moment, I'm like, man, okay, there's something here. I need to talk to these guys more. And so whenever I got the chance, whenever we had a big meal together, I wanted to sit next to these seminarians and continue to ask them questions, to walk with them when we were going from one place to another, and just continue to learn and soak in what they had learned throughout their time in seminary. Most of them had been in for at least 5 or so years. And then once we got back from the pilgrimage, I kind of have this summer leading into senior year and continue to have this question on my mind and Jesus' answer. What do you want me to do? I want you to lay down your life and follow me. So as my senior year kind of begins, I sort of want to kind of test the waters with Father Grassgard without letting him too far into what's going on, just kind of this typical like, hey, I want your help, but I'm still going to keep you in arm's length away. And so we kind of have informal meetings and we're talking. I'm an assistant chaplain, and so we're meeting together on a consistent basis and working together. I start serving Mass for him more and more, which is something that I loved to do growing up, but had stopped kind of doing further along as I got in high school.
Which most people do.
Yeah. It kind of becomes this thing of like, I'm too cool for that. Like, if I sit in the pew, I can do less. I can show up, but I don't have to be up there. I can kind of just sit in the pew, do my thing, say some responses, sing a few songs, and call her
out of
good.
there.
But as me and a few of the other senior guys served for masses with him, and yeah, it kind of rekindled that love for being in the sanctuary, being close to the sacrifice happening on the altar. And as we got into the spring, closer to the end of the school year, this idea of following God through the priesthood became more clear, kind of more evident. And it got to the point where Father Grassgard just kind of asked, like, hey, the Diocese of Bismarck leads this kind of come and see weekend at a seminary in St. Paul, Minnesota. Would that interest you? Would you think you'd want to go? And internally, I'm like, holy cow, like, that sounds amazing. Like, that's actually, I would love that. But it's trying to keep, this kind of cool sort of high schooler facade, which, isn't true. It's almost kind of like an oxymoron, a cool high. I'm like, it'd be all right. He's like, okay, well, I want you to present it to the rest of the guys in your class, and we'll get it together and, go from there. I'm like, what? I have to like present it to him. And so at one point we had like a whole van full, but then as it got closer, guys kind of chickened out, made excuses. And so it ended up just being me, Father Grassgard, and one of my best friends. So we go out to St. John Vianney College Seminary in St. Paul, Minnesota, which in God's providence was the seminary that I ended up going to later on. And I walk in, and as I just recall it now, I can just sort of all the feelings and emotions and deeper movements of the heart just come back. But it was like a tidal wave of peace when I came through those doors. I'm like, this feels right. And even just describing it like that of feeling right doesn't even capture everything, because it was more than just this flippant feeling, but a deeper movement of grace, really, and just kind of recognizing that. And then spending a weekend with the seminarians there, more and more my heart was just saying yes, yes. Just all these different things resounding and re-echoing in my heart of just like, this is right, this is good. Like, I think this is what God wants. And so we get back to Dickinson, pull up in the parking lot of Trinity High School, and I pull Father Grassgard aside, and I'm like, Father, I could be totally wrong on this, and I probably am, because like I think I'm just crazy or something. I'm just kind of just forcing my own thoughts on this, but it seems like God might want me to go to seminary. And then he starts laughing. I'm like, okay, yeah, this confirms it. I'm just crazy. I'm just making all this up. And when he's done laughing, he's like, I've been waiting like this whole year for you to finally say that. And like a good father, he knew like he couldn't just come out and say, Colten, like God wants you to go to seminary. You need to go to seminary. Just do it. Go talk to the vocation director. Like, no, he was patient, and he allowed the Lord to reveal his own will slowly but surely, and allow me to slowly but surely recognize that for myself. And then when I did, he then was able, like a good father, to usher me towards your brother, Father Josh Waltz, who was the vocation director at the time. And he's just like, hey, so now this kind of next step is getting in contact with the vocation director, kind of telling him everything that you've told me. Like, can I give him your number? I'm like, yeah, sure. Sounds good. And so he does, and Father Josh Waltz eventually contacts me, but it's on the way to state track. And so I'm like, yeah, now's not a good time. We're on a bus. It's loud. There's a lot of kind of sort of intimate details that I want to share that I don't want everyone else around me hearing. He's like, okay, yeah, totally understand. Why don't you give me a call after state track, after graduation, and we'll go from there. I'm like, okay, sweet. And so all of that comes to pass. And I'm reminded, oh, I should probably give him a call back. But as I think of that, all this just fear, anxiety, doubt comes up. And at the time, I don't see it for what it is. But as I've grown in the spiritual life, it's just so easy to call out like, oh yeah, that's the evil one.
Right.
He didn't want me to go to seminary. He didn't want me to take this further step. And so he brings up all this fear and all these lies. Like, who are you to go to seminary? Like, after everything that you've done, after all the ways that you've sinned, like, you're out of your mind. And yeah, not really knowing the gift of the spiritual fathers that I had in my life at that time, and not knowing the reality of needing to share those things as I grew in the spiritual life, just kind of kept it all to myself and really bought into those lies and kind of ghosted your brother until it was like the end of July, and just kind of on a whim, just sort of worked up the courage, like, yeah, okay, yeah, I'll give him a call. So I called him and told him like, hey, yeah, this is Colten Steiner. We talked about, entering seminary. I still want to join and enter. And then he started laughing. He's like, man, I'm sorry, but it's too late. They closed the applications for the seminary. There's all this work even before you apply to the seminary itself that you have to do, and there's not enough time. And I'm sorry, but like, do you have any backup plans? I'm like, well, I had applied to the University of North Dakota and had some stuff set out there. He's like, okay, well, the Lord can work with this. Like, go to UND. I'll actually be up there in the fall, and we can talk then. But, make sure that you actually talk to me. And so I just remember hanging up the phone and feeling just totally defeated. And just like kind of making this prayer like, what? I thought that this is what you wanted. And just sort of, kind of threw myself a pity party. And looking back, it's like, well, yeah, it is what he wanted. But we have to cooperate with that grace that he's offering to us.
That's right.
But in all his providence, I go to UND and, as one does, just kind of immerse myself in the culture there, try to fit in, trying to kind of find my niche, and that idea of priesthood, of discernment, again, kind of moves to the back burner. And just college life sort of takes over. And it was a tough time because God wasn't the main focus. It was more of like, how can I make myself happy in this new place, in this new environment? And I had two suite mates that were rushing Pi Kappa Alpha, and it seemed like what they were offering me was the way to authentic relationship and authentic friendship, which, as we kind of talked about before, you have this moment of instant gratification, but that only lasts so long. And that very quickly just sort of faded. And one Friday night, as I was kind of getting ready to go out and hang out with them, I just realized I'm really unhappy. And I just sort of sat in my chair in my dorm room, just kind of sulking, but in a good sort of way of just realizing, like, what am I doing? Like, something's got to change. So then my suite mates, they come into my room and they're like, hey, man, like, you're not even ready. Like, come on, like, let's get going. And like, you guys go without me. I'm just yeah, I'm not in the mood. And they're kind of surprised and they're like, okay, whatever. And they leave. And I'm just kind of sitting there and I'm like, I have no idea what to do now. But just kind of felt sort of like, I guess I'll go and check my email on my computer. And I do, and I'm kind of going through some of them. And I had this email from the pastor of the Newman Center at UND, Father Luke Meyer. And really unknowingly or kind of unconsciously, the first weekend that I was there, I had filled out this new student card and like different ways to get involved, what are you interested in, and had marked down a few things. And one of the things that I had marked down was peer ministry, because it sounded like being an assistant chaplain. I'm like, oh yeah, that sounds kind of neat, but I hadn't really given it much thought, if any, especially after, you know, meeting my suite mates and spending more time in them and getting involved in what they were doing in rushing pike and everything. And in this email, he said, yeah, I noticed that you had marked this down as something that interested you. This is a paid position at the Newman Center. If you're interested, contact me. We can set up an interview. And I'm like, I can get paid to kind of do these things that I enjoyed doing back in high school. I'm like, that doesn't sound too bad. So reach out to him and set up an interview. And yeah, I end up getting accepted for the job and start working at the Newman Center, helping put on different events, helping just with the spiritual life at the Newman Center itself, doing different office work. And because of my job there, I am kind of forced in a certain sense to start spending more time at the Newman Center. Way more time than I had previously in the previous months, weeks, you know, other than my 1 hour a weekend for Mass, I had almost no exposure to the Newman Center, but now I'm spending multiple hours a day there.
If you don't know what the Newman Center is, it's the Catholic church for university students on any particular university.
Yeah. And because of that, it's like I started spending more time in prayer. I started spending more time around people who were actually concerned about me, concerned about my soul, who were concerned with authentic friendship, calling me to virtue, calling me to something higher. And as I started spending more time with them, as I grew in friendship with them, I just realized, oh, I feel happy again. Like, this is something that I haven't felt for a while. And the pastor encouraged me, like, hey, we have these open slots for adoration. Why don't you take one of them? I'm like, yeah, okay, I can do that. So I signed up for a weekly holy hour and started, you know, trying to build up that habit of prayer, but it's almost just like lifting weights. You can't just go from, you know, doing a little bit of lifting like 5-pound weights to immediately trying to max out on the bench,
right,
you know, with double plates or something like that. And so it was difficult at first. And one of the ways that I would sort of battle that difficulty of spending an hour in silent prayer was playing what I call Bible roulette. So just getting out the Bible and flipping to some random page. And one day, I was having a particularly tough time praying. I had some exams coming up, and my mind was being pulled in all sorts of different places. And so I'm like, okay, well, let's get a good game of Bible roulette in. What does Scripture have to say? And so I just kind of open and like, let's go deep. Let's go deep in the Bible and go very close to the end, which is where a lot of the Gospels are located, right before the different letters from Paul and then Revelation. And I opened to Matthew chapter 9, and it opens up with Jesus looking at this crowd that had gathered in front of him. And we get an inside revelation on the interior movements of Jesus' own heart. And it says that as he looked at the crowd, he was moved with pity for them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. And that line just struck me to my core, especially after just a week before that, some experiences that I had had on campus. And so just to kind of move backwards a little bit, the weekend before, we had put on a swing dance at the Newman Center. And as a peer minister, it was my job to kind of set up for it, do some stuff at the dance itself, and then clean up afterwards. And so I was headed from the Newman Center to my dorm probably at like 1:30, 2 in the morning. And bear in mind, like, this is fall in Grand Forks, North Dakota. Like, it's not particularly warm. And as I'm walking to my dorm, I see, two young women dressed in, a way that didn't necessarily speak to the dignity of who they are as daughters of God. And I just kind of felt this ache in my heart, especially as they kind of turned off the sidewalk and went into one of the fraternity houses. And I just kind of, it's like, Lord, I hope that they know that they're loved. It's kind of like the prayer, the ache in my heart. And I continue walking, and about a minute or so later, I see this guy, and he's kind of stumbling all over the place, pretty, obviously intoxicated. And after he kind of stumbles for a little while, I see him beeline for a garbage can, and he just starts
Puking
throwing
in
up.
the can. Yeah.
Yep. And again, this kind of similar ache in my heart. I'm like, Lord, I really hope that he knows that he's loved as well. Even, in this sort of sad moment. And so in that time in the chapel, after reading that line, Jesus was moved with pity, for they were like sheep without a shepherd. I'm like, Jesus, that's how I felt in that moment. And throughout the rest of that holy hour, he just kind of revealed to me just me sharing in the sentiments of his own heart and his own invitation, or maybe I should say re-invitation to me to join him in that search for lost souls, in that search for these sheep who are broken and battered and don't know about their own shepherd. And I remember leaving there convicted, like, okay, I have to be more serious about this whole seminary thing. And so then when your brother came later on, I just kind of told all of this to him, and stuff that had come up in prayer, and these different ways that I was trying to grow in my spiritual life, grow as a Christian Catholic man. And he's like, it's so good, actually, that you didn't call me, because you've grown so much just in this time being at college. You've made the faith your own. You've taken responsibility for your faith. And now I really feel confident in offering you an application to seminary. You're actually serious about it now. And this is something that it really seems that the Lord is asking of you. And so that was just a really big kind of confirming thing, and just a huge grace moment for me. Like, wow, okay, when he said this past summer, like, yeah, the Lord can work with this. Yeah, he can, and he did.
Well, thank you, Colten, for sharing that unbelievable life journey story with all of us. I want to pick up in the next episode the application process to where you're at now, because I think there's a lot of people that are very interested in what goes on behind closed doors in a seminary where a young man or even an older man goes to be formed as a priest. It's a very extensive process from the application all the way to ordination. You've been through it all, and in episode number 2, he's going to share that process with us. Until then, I'm Father Justin Waltz, and this is The Awakening.